For the second straight year, a Miami Hurricanes committed quarterback goes out there and wins Battle Miami 7-on-7.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It was Luke Nickel last year. Dereon Coleman, Miami Hurricanes 2026 quarterback commit, gets it done this year. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On this loaded Monday episode of Locked On Canes, we'll talk scouting reports from some of the most important Miami Hurricanes 2026 recruits. We'll talk about those top prospects who competed at Battle and who visited Miami over the weekend. But we got to lead off as we bring in the recruiting overlord. He is back. Brian Smith is with us. Brian Smith was at Battle covering all of these top prospects, including Dereon Coleman, Brian, who for folks who may have been doubting, his arm talent, his overall I don't know why you would doubt Dereon Coleman's arm talent, but he goes out there and with DEFCON United, he wins Battle 7-on-7. He also takes MVP honors at the event. What did you see from the Hurricanes quarterback commit?
He's as close a comparison to Cam Ward as any high school kid I've ever seen. It's ironic, like the way they play, like the arm whip, doesn't have to always follow through, very fast delivery. He's kind of like a shortstop playing quarterback, the way he plays. It's hilarious because they have so many little idiosyncrasies that are similar to each other. And obviously Cam obviously played for Miami, but that's who he reminds me of. And I know him pretty well, and I'm really happy for him because he has developed so much over the last year. And even since he played the state title game where they were playing zone and he was running and stuff, he's just figured out how to do things differently than what he used to. He used to be a guy that just beat teams against man coverage. Now he's starting to figure out zone a little bit, and his ball placement's ridiculous. So this, in my opinion, he'll be in consideration for 5-star from all the services.
Wow. So I got to ask you about his size, and a lot of people were asking me about this, but I wasn't at the event in person. You were, because I think, and not that all the recruiting services are up to date, but I think the recruiting services have him listed in like the 5'11" range, but it seems like Coleman has hit a growth spurt, right? What is he looking at to you now in height?
He's at least 6 foot if he's not 6'1". He's much stronger than he was last year. You can just tell by standing there talking to him. He said he's 165 pounds right now, but his body's completely different than what it was last June when I saw him at OT7. So he needs to get up over 180 before he gets to Miami, but he's got over a year, before it's going to matter. So that shouldn't be that big a problem. And he's very mobile. I know he's considered a pocket kid, but the way he moves, like in Battle, you get one blitz per game or whatever. When somebody blitzes, he can turn to his right or his left and really make a guy miss and still get a pass off that's accurate. So mobility is not a problem. This is an elite player. And to be honest with you, there were only a couple other quarterbacks I would have put up there with him at Battle, but he was tremendous. So Miami's in a pretty good spot there.
Man, well, yeah, and he's been a Miami verbal commit for quite some time now, and Miami got in very early on his recruitment. He plays at Jones High School in Orlando, and you mentioned, Brian, that this is a player who might end up ascending to 5-star status. So, I mean, have you heard of any other schools that may decide to turn up the heat for him?
I didn't even ask him about it personally. I talked to the people in the Miami media, and it's all Miami. So I just left it alone. So
and I can agree with that. You guys know we're pretty close with his quarterbacks coach, Balin Trujillo. And I mean, listen, obviously a lot can change in 11 months. I'm not stupid, but at this moment, he's pretty locked in.
Yeah, the good news for Miami is he just likes the offensive fit, and I think it would be a very good one, to be honest with you. Again, he plays in a lot of ways, mannerisms included, like Cam does. He does good when he drifts left or drifts right. He can throw from the pocket, throw from the run. and he's got a really quick twitch delivery. So he's not much fun to play against if you're a DB. He doesn't give you many chances to get in front of passes. He's really got to miss on his read for it to be a pick or a deflection, because accuracy, ball placement, speed, trajectory, all those things he understands.
And you and I we're both believers in Luke Nickel, who's, he's now enrolled at Miami. He's a year in front of Dereon Coleman. I mean, I would imagine, Brian, in a year's time, we'll see how established Nickel is by then. There's going to be some competition, right, for whoever is the starter after Carson Beck.
When Miami was great, this is how it always was. There was always a couple of different guys that were competing for that spot. So if you're going to be a big-time program, you got to have multiple guys that can play. And now they're pushing straight ahead with top quarterbacks. This is what Miami wanted to be, and they're recruiting that way.
Man, we got a lot more to get to here with Brian Smith, the recruiting overlord, who was down at Battle 7-on-7 Miami. Now, a player I'd like to ask you about, Brian. Now, he didn't actually compete at Battle because he had basketball obligations over the weekend, but he did show up to cheer on Raw 7-on-7. I'm talking about Northwestern receiver Calvin Russell, 6'5.5", 200 pounds. Miami has been all over Russell's recruitment. You've scouted this player before. What does he bring to the table?
He is the kid that you throw alley-oops to in basketball. He's 6'4", 6'5". He has really good lateral movement for a kid that's long. To compare him, like Jeremiah is the kid everybody will compare him to because he's such a long kid like him. But I think he's better laterally than Jeremiah. Jeremiah's straight line speed's insane. So I would say this kid is the more all-around pure athlete in some ways. It's not like Jeremiah's 220. This kid's a little thinner, but he hasn't played receiver long. You got to remember, he played quarterback for a long time. So he's just learning the position, and he still makes people look bad. So his upside is through the roof. This is, I would assume, Calvin's the number one guy on their board at receiver. And it's just hard to, I was talking to a couple of different quarterbacks about this, like, hey, who are you recruiting to your school and all that. The thing that is hard to find is the guy that's 6'2" and above that can really play. There are a ton of 5'11" to 6'1" kids that can play. And I'm not picking on it. Calvin is unique due to his height. He's at least 6'4", and that just changes the situation. Once he understands all the route releases and the concepts with zone, he will be a very big problem for any college team playing against him.
And other players we're going to talk about on this new episode of Locked On Canes. But the recruiting overlord, definitely want to get his take on Chaminade athlete Derek Cooper, who spent some time with the Hurricanes over the weekend. Jaylen Seatbelt Waters, who's a Florida Gators commit at cornerback, but Miami is working on a flip. Aiden Pouncy, would like to talk about him. And Brian's going to give us some other top performers from Battle 7-on-7. So you guys want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started with the recruiting overlord on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. I know we're having fun. NFL playoffs with Prize Picks. Guys, I have been playing Prize Picks since 2021. This helped me get through like the later stages of the pandemic when sports had just come back. Prize Picks, guys, is the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. And yeah, guys, now it's playoff time. We're getting down to crunch time in the NFL, and there's no better way to get in on that action than Prize Picks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least two players' stat projections, and if your picks hit, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. Guys, I love how on Prize Picks, you can go cross-league and cross-sport with it. I can have two NFL players on my selection, two NBA players. If you're playing tonight, national championship game, two college football players as well, right on the same selection and win up to 1,000 times your money. Guys, this is an absolute game changer. If you're ready to run your game this football season, download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Run your game. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And just so you know, this is a 2-episode day today, because later on, we're going to talk with Xavier Lucas's lawyer, Darren Heitner. We're going to talk about, he'll give his response to that strongly worded statement that the Wisconsin Badgers issued and where things stand with Xavier Lucas. And I know, as we got the recruiting overlord here, Brian, I know this is what you love most about college football, right? All the NIL stuff, all the legal challenges and everything. I know this is your favorite part of the game, right?
I saw the statement. I don't know if you did. The Big Ten put out a
I did.
statement too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I read about a third of it and I just kept scrolling. It will end badly for all parties involved.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. It's awful. And this is the tip of the iceberg, because once one school starts complaining about another, it's just going to spiral. So to think that there's not tampering and contracts being broken all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
It's, like Florida State, the basketball program, it's in the opposite direction.
Yep.
Leonard Hamilton, former Miami coach. Yeah, it's NIL has a lot of problems, and there's no regulation that's consistent. So the lawyers are going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk to a lawyer who I think has done a pretty outstanding job with the way he's helped out Xavier Lucas. He's going to join us later today, and Darren Heitner. But let's talk about the stuff Brian Smith enjoys talking about, and that's scouting. Brian, we talked a little bit last week about Jaylen Waters, Mr. Seatbelt, cornerback currently committed to the Florida Gators, class of 2026. But there seems to be some smoke and momentum that Miami's trying to get a flip there, and he also competed over the weekend.
Yeah, it depends on who you talk to on what's going on. I can't remember who it was. Somebody interviewed him, Tom Loy, or it was Wilt Fong or somebody, and he said, "I'm still 100% committed to Florida, but I'm visiting Miami." I love it when they say that, because that's the definition of false. But I've heard Miami is the team that's going to end up with it. So take it for what it's worth. And because of who told me that, I didn't even interview him, and I was standing by him. So Miami's trending in the right direction. Now, this could end up being a battle for a long time. We are in January, and he's a national recruit that like every school in the country would like to have. And watching him play, I like scouting 10 times more than interviewing, because these kids, especially this early, these kids, they don't know where they're going most part. But he has the ability to change directions. He's well over 6 foot, and he is yoked. He's put in time in the weight room. This is a kid that, like, let's be honest. What's the position Miami needs the most help, Alex? What's the corner?
Corners and really any defensive back, really.
This is a kid that would come in and compete from a physical standpoint right away. So confident. When guys got in his face, he was not afraid to get back at him. He reminds me of a South Florida kid, even though he plays in Tampa. He would fit in really well in a program that wants to get back to the top. And I'm kind of curious to see what visits he takes over the next few weeks, because again, he can pretty much go where he wants. Does he visit a Georgia or a Texas or something? I don't know. But right now I've been told Miami.
That's on Jaylen Seatbelt Waters. Let me take a detour real quick from class of 2026s, because, since we were talking about the Xavier Lucas situation a second ago, while I have you here, I would love the scouting report. This is a player a couple years ago, came out of American Heritage, had a good first season at Wisconsin. He's going to be a Miami Hurricanes cornerback now. What would Miami fans expect from Xavier Lucas next year?
I was always shocked that he wasn't coveted more by the Canes or the Knowles or the Gators right out the gate, because he was at Heritage. He's over 6 foot, and he was well schooled. I remember going to a practice, and Smitty, his head coach, I'm talking like, he looks really good. Like, why isn't he? And he was kind of puzzled too, but it is what it is. And I thought he was a top 200 kid conservatively coming out of high school. Those kids don't leave South Florida and go to Wisconsin. So they got a coup, and good job by Wisconsin. They got on him early, and that's why he picked the Badgers. That makes sense. But I think he could play free safety, corner, or nickel. Athletically, he's very smooth, changes directions well. And again, it's length. He has that length that you're looking for. So Miami needs help there. I would be surprised if they didn't find a role for him. As you noted, the Hurricanes need help at all the spots in the secondary. Maybe it's nickel he plays originally. I don't know. He's a physical kid coming from Heritage. That's not surprising. But he actually did play well against competition in the Big Ten as a freshman too. So it's different playing at the college level. I think that he's a seasoned player that would have a chance to compete too deep pretty quick for the Canes.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to 2026 prospects. Now, a player who is verbally committed to Miami and seems pretty well locked in is Camden Portis. What have you seen scouting Camden Portis, the son of Clinton Portis? Camden is a cornerback, a defensive back. What have you seen scouting Camden?
Physical. He's a kid that likes to use his hands, get up on a guy near the line of scrimmage and push him off his route. And he is not afraid to mix it up. He's a guy that probably has the mentality of a linebacker, but he's a DB. Of course, Portis was obviously a very physical player too. So he plays in the Charlotte area, and I don't think there's any doubt that his dad would like him to play for Miami and all that. So that's a kid to watch for. I'm not sure what spot he would end up playing at. It could be nickel. It could be corner to see how he grows. But he's another kid that he's spent considerable time in the weight room. So I'm curious to see what happens with him. But, if he doesn't end up at Miami, I'd be pretty surprised.
Another defensive back who is coveted by Miami, but, coveted by a lot of other schools is Aiden Pouncy, safety from Winter Park, Florida. What do you see from him on the field, and what's been the buzz on his recruitment?
He's got schools all over the country trying to get him. Miami and Florida, shocker, are involved. Georgia's involved, which is another sign he can play. Michigan and Notre Dame, according to what Tom Weiss wrote this morning. He didn't compete. He was just at the event, and he was just hanging out with everybody and helping with the media and stuff. He's got to be 6'2.5", if not 6'3". I know John Garcia loves him. The guy writes for Rivals, and he usually is a little leery of taller corners, but he thinks he's tremendous, and so do I. And he lives there close to you now. He's in the middle of Orlando. He's in Winter Park. So he's a player that can go wherever he wants. The spring trips will be interesting. He's going to allegedly take trips up north to Michigan or Notre Dame. I'll see if that actually happens. I think he'll stay down south. But this could be another UF-Miami battle.
You love those, man. Just so Brandon Olson and I have a reason to argue and do some crossover episodes. You always love those. Derek Cooper, what's the latest on his recruitment, his scouting? The athlete from Chaminade Madonna can play running back, can play linebacker, could probably play punter if he wanted to. What's going on there with Derek Cooper?
When I spoke to Coop, he said he's 205, so he hasn't really changed much in weight, but he's gotten so much better with the pass receiving aspect of playing football. I didn't know.
Good. He
was playing with Julius Jones's team, and they used him in the slot. He's an awful big slot, by the way. And he's a viable option, and he can make guys miss. But the funniest play of the entire tournament, they ran a dive play in a 7-on-7 tournament, and the guys went to the side. They didn't want to get in front of it because he's a bull in the china shop. He's just put together. Miami and Georgia, I still think, are the two teams to watch from what I was told. So, but everything else with him is pretty status quo. He's a national top 25 kid, in my opinion. I don't care which position you put him at, linebacker or running back. Doesn't matter.
We got more to get to because Brian Smith was scouting dozens, if not hundreds, of prospects at Battle 7. Probably hundreds is probably more realistic. So we're nowhere near done yet. We got the recruiting overlord with us, talking Miami Hurricanes football and recruiting right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. Guys, FanDuel has given us great action every single week from the first whistle to the final drive. FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is so easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Guys, you're not just betting on who's going to win the game. You've got over-unders, which player is going to score a touchdown. There's so much excitement to be had at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Spencer McLaughlin on Locked On College Football. whether it's previewing the national championship game. I'd like to get Brian Smith's prediction on that in a moment as well, or talking about it afterwards. Spencer is going to have you covered from every single angle. Locked On College Football, like this show, is available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Recruiting Overlord is with us. So, Brian, we've talked about a number of players who either competed in or at least appeared at Battle 7-on-7. You scouted hundreds of others. I don't need the scouting report on all 200 or whatever, but any other players stood out to you over the weekend?
Javari Flowers, he's arguably Miami's top target in South Florida on defense. He's certainly the top 2 or 3. He's at Miami Northwestern. Cornerback that impressed all of us. We knew he was good anyway, but seeing him again, he was at the Under Armour event a few weeks ago in Orlando. He just carries himself in a way that just says DB, and he has incredibly quick hands. He gets his hands on the football a lot. He's one of the best players in the country. And Miami and Florida State is my guess for the final 2, but he grew up an Oregon fan, which is weird for a Miami kid. Yeah, I just report the news, Alex.
All the uniform combos, man. That's how they get all the kids.
It's working. I know that. Miami is going to be a school to watch there. Keyshawn Henderson is a kid that he might be the best player in the country. If you're not familiar with him, you're a Miami fan. It's not surprising. He's from the Houston area. He was supposed to be at Miami Saturday night. I didn't even ask him about it. He's technically committed to the University of Houston, but we'll see. Insane athleticism, but he prefers to play quarterback. So if he sticks with that, obviously Coleman's the guy, but he's an unbelievable player. Just remember, if you have a chance to watch highlights, I strongly suggest it. He's an incredible player. Larry Miles, I don't know if we mentioned him or not. That's the receiver that plays with Coleman. That's a team that Miami, they should be the one to watch. I mean, Dereon's going there. He catches everything. He just has incredible hands, and he's really good after the catch. He's annoying. He reminds me a little bit of JoJo Trader. Larry plays at Jones with Dereon, so he's also schooled well and used to playing against top competition. I think he can play pretty early. Tadarius Hughes, he's from South Dade. He's technically committed to Florida State. I highly doubt that's going to matter much to Miami. He's a nickel, free safety, strong safety, really long. He had a pick 6 while I was there videoing him. He's a kid that's going to have every school in the country continue to come after him. Really long kid, 6'2" or so. And the last kid I want to mention, because it won't surprise anybody where he's from, Chaminade Madonna. And yes, he's a receiver, Peter Pierre. He's a young kid. He was playing 15U, but he looked like he was 20 years old. He's got to be 6'4", 215, 220 already. Just put him in the back pocket. That's going to be a really, really good football player.
We got one college football game left, and then I'm going to be, obviously I love the off season, but it's, the season hits different, and it's going to be bittersweet tonight, especially with 2 teams I don't particularly like going at it. But it's the final college football game of the year. Ohio State 8.5-point favorites against Notre Dame for the national championship. Can Notre Dame pull off the upset, Brian? Do you think they can make it interesting tonight? How do you think it plays out?
I think they can. I know everybody at Miami hates Al Golden, but he's probably the best DC in college football right now. Yeah. And what he's done with them this year is pretty impressive. I just don't know if they can score. I'm not worried about their defense. I'm worried about their offense putting their defense in bad spots, because I just don't think the wide receiver group at Notre Dame is consistent enough. And I just think that Ohio State will hit a few more big plays. So whether it's Jeremiah or somebody else, I think Ohio State's going to make a run later in the game, wear them out. I like Ohio State 31-21.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. Well, he does an awesome job here on the Locked On Podcast Network. He also hosts Locked On Seminoles. So he's such a professional that we can even be friends despite that. We appreciate all the hard work that Brian Smith does. Make sure to follow him on X at FBScout_Florida. Brian, thank you so much for the time, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
And remember, everyone, we're going to have an episode later on today, and I'm sure Darren Heitner, who is the lawyer for Xavier Lucas, is going to have a lot to say responding to that Wisconsin statement and kind of taking us inside how they were able to maneuver around the transfer portal to get Xavier enrolled at Miami. So we'll have that for you guys later on today. Thank you so much for making us your first listen and your first watch today. We'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.